Hello there. Welcome to our weekly look at events inside Syria. I'm Hazem Seeker. In the past week, since the Russian and Chinese veto in the UN Security Council, we've seen a significant rise in violence on the streets of Syrian towns. A number of the countries that supported the vetoed peace plan are now urgently looking at new solutions. That is the main focus of our discussion this week. And meanwhile, the propaganda war is also being stepped up by all sides. The US State Department has released satellite images of what it says are heavy weapons being used to shell residential neighborhoods in the city of Homs. And there are conflicting claims inside Syria over who was responsible for bomb blasts in the city of Aleppo. Nicole Johnston has more.
This declassified satellite image was posted on the Facebook page of the US Embassy in Damascus. The US State Department says it's proof that the Syrian government is attacking residential areas in Homs. It highlights military and armoured vehicles, as well as craters and smoke.
These are the facts on the ground. And the more that we are able to get video imagery and photographs and other testimonials out of Syria and show them to the world, the more difficult it is for the Syrian regime to try to deny what is happening, or for the allies of the Syrian regime around the world to deny what is happening.
The image was uploaded by US Ambassador to Syria, Robert Ford. He added this note to it.
I hear the devastating stories about the newborns in Homs dying in hospitals where electricity has been cut, and when we see disturbing photos offering proof that the regime is using mortars and artillery against residential neighborhoods, all of us become even more concerned about the tragic outcome for Syrian civilians.
Another satellite image company has also released these pictures of Homs, taken on Friday, and showing the movement of Syrian government tanks. YouTube video of the Bab Arma neighbourhood of Homs has also been uploaded. Al Jazeera can't verify these pictures. The city of Homs has been under siege for a week now. Activists say there's been constant shelling by government troops. However, the Syrian government says it's trying to protect civilians from armed gangs. Violence has also spread to Syria's second city, Aleppo, with 2 massive explosions on Friday. State television called it a terrorist attack. Both military and civilians were reported to have been killed. State television says one explosion was made by a suicide bomber in a car packed with explosives that stopped beside a police station, and another bomb was detonated outside an intelligence base. Later, a Free Syrian Army commander told Al Jazeera it carried out an attack in Aleppo with RPGs and light weapons, but denied responsibility for the bombings.
The Friday explosions might have been planned by the regime, which planted explosions in the main entrances so as not for us to be able to storm them. And I think the regime detonated the explosives after we left the area. We don't have suicide bombers. We confront face to face.
Activists say rescuing the injured from cities like Homs is becoming more difficult, and they fear a greater onslaught by Syrian tanks is imminent. Nicole Johnston, Al Jazeera.
So who can stop the bloodshed in Syria, and what can regional powers do while deep divisions among the international community remain? Well, to answer these questions, we're joined by our guests. In Istanbul, Bassam Imadi, former Syrian ambassador to Sweden and a member of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Syrian National Council. In Ankara, Yousef Kanli, a columnist and former editor-in-chief of Turkish Daily News. And in Riyadh, we have Khaliq, Abdella, an author and professor of political science at the United Arab Emirates. Welcome, all three of you, gentlemen. Bassam Imadi, if I could start with you. Now, presumably the Syrian regime, after this failed UN resolution, will be looking at this as a victory and an excuse basically to double down and step up their crackdown on this uprising, if what we've seen over the last week is anything to go by. But as a former ambassador yourself, what is going through the minds of the leadership in Damascus right now and the people around Bashar al-Assad?
Good evening. Actually, the problem in the leadership is that they are living on another planet. They don't realize the reality on the ground. They think that with their oppressive measures, they can stop this uprising. This is too late for that. The people in Syria have gone out in order to change their way of life that they have been leading for 40 years. They have been living in fear, under oppression. Now it's over. Now they want to change. perhaps at the beginning of the revolution, people would have settled down with some reforms to the way they have been governed by this regime. But now, after all these atrocities that have been committed by the regime, people have now decided to ask for a total change of regime, and that's why they are paying for that change with their own lives. So this is actually the situation for the people of Syria. As for the leadership, they have, it seems, they have decided to go on with their oppressive measures in order to try and finish this thing. And this has proved to be impossible, because people are going out every day, they are going out every week and doing all what they can in order to show that they are determined to finish this regime.
But how does the leadership structure work in Damascus? I mean, who's basically calling the shots there? Is it all Assad? And I mean, how much influence do the people around him have?
In fact, Bashar Assad himself is the top man there, and of course there are people around him like his closest family, and then relatives around him, and the security forces, and then the leaders of the army, but he calls the shots at the end. I mean, he has so many advisors, but unfortunately he always makes the worst choice. Whatever choices or alternatives are given to him, he has proven to choose the worst out of them, and the result is very obvious on the arena in Syria. So he's the one who calls the shots.
All right. Yousef Kanli, you are joining us from Turkey, which is in a lot of ways really at the front lines of any possible international involvement as far as what happens inside Syria. How is the leadership there going to be looking at this? What are their options realistically?
First of all, Turkey is not willing, or Turkey is not enthusiastic about international operation on Syria.
But at the same time, they don't want a full-scale civil war going on their doorstep, do they?
That's the problem. That's why Turkey is saying, while it is against the international operation, if the international community, that is the Security Council, endorses an intervention on Syria, it will participate in that. That is the legitimacy aspect of the problem, because the situation is next door. It's a very serious situation. You have refugees, probable refugee problem. You have other security-related problems, including the PKK using Syrian territory. Therefore, Turkey is very alarmed to this problem. And Turkey is trying to make whatever contribution possible to make this problem resolved within Syria and by Syrian actors.
Abdel, Khaliq, Abdella, if I can turn to you. I mean, does the failure of this UN resolution now perhaps accelerate the militarization of this uprising in Syria, if I could put it that way? I mean, the people who are protesting against the regime will have been looking at this sort of, in their minds, they might be saying, well, the international community has failed to help us out. We're on our own in this, and we've got to take arms.
Well, I think from day one, the regime has believed that that the military solution is the only solution to put down the popular and peaceful uprising. So it was from day one militarized by the regime. So it's not that the people have opted for the military option at the later stage, but it was from day one. As Ambassador Osama has said, the regime in Syria don't have any other solution but a military solution. They have never really believed in any political solution to all this. And the killing machine is going on, and this is what is bothering everybody in the Arab world today, and what bothered everybody, towards the veto that we heard, we saw coming from Russia and China. Millions of Syrians and millions of Arabs are saying, "Shame on you, China! Shame on you, Russia, for supporting a brutal regime and for being on the wrong side of history and on the wrong side of justice." So the militarization has not, it's not something that just came up. It was the option the regime has opted for from day one.
want to talk a little bit more about what the Arab nations might do next here. Last week, 6 Gulf states decided to expel Syrian envoys and withdraw their own over what they call the mass slaughter of civilians. And on Friday, Saudi Arabia circulated a draft resolution backing an Arab peace plan for Syria among members of the UN General Assembly. King Abdella himself has spoken out criticizing the international body over Syria. Here's what he had to say.
The vote that has taken place at the UN was not sending the right signal. There is no doubt that the confidence of the world in the United Nations has been shaken. The world must be governed by reason, by justice, by ethics, and by stopping the aggressor. I hope you will be patient, and we will be patient until God's will resolves the problem.
Abdel, Khaliq, Abdella, if I could turn back to you on this. It's not often that we hear from the King of Saudi Arabia on something like this, and he was quite critical there. What are the options here for Syria's Arab neighbors?
Well, I think what we heard from King Abdella is what you would hear from almost everybody in the Arab world today, is that it's time that this killing, that the daily killing has to stop, and that the tolerance level of the Arabs and of the international community has reached its max, and hence something has to be done. There is a moral duty, there is a political duty.
But what specifically do you think should be done then? Because I mean, we could keep talking about how terrible all of this is and keep saying something has to be done, something has to be done, but specifically what action could be taken?
Well, there's a need for more pressure, for more outside pressure on the regime, okay? And I think this kind of political pressure is needed to send a strong signal that this killing that is going on has reached a level which cannot be tolerated. So more moral pressure, more political pressure is needed. This is why the veto coming from Russia and from China was like license for the regime to continue its killing. There are people who are being killed. 20 people on average are being killed every day for the past 10 months. This is a duty for the international community to send a strong moral political message through the United Nations, through Security Council resolution, that this is not acceptable. Beyond that, there are so many other things that you could do, going from political boycott, from some kind of humanitarian aid to the Syrian. The Syrian desperately need international solidarity, and I think this is what they're calling for is simple freedom, democracy, dignity. And this is their right. This is their moment for freedom. And I think we all should chip in, and we all should stand by them and send them a message of solidarity. That's what is all needed. Beyond that, the Syrian will be able to continue their own struggle against this brutal regime in Syria.
Bassam Imadi, if I could turn back to you to get your view on this as a member of this Syrian National Council, this opposition group. The resolution has failed. The violence continues. What do you want to see from the international community now?
Okay, thank you for this question. It's a very good question. But first, let me refer to the speech of King Abdullah. This is the second time the king speaks about Syria in a very disappointed terms, and also a very emotional one. The level of killing has disturbed the King of Saudi Arabia. He is known to be a very mild person, but he puts very strong words because the situation is unacceptable, and that one should really pay attention to. The second thing is what your guest has said. Actually, he talked about political pressure, and your question about what people expect from the international world. Political pressure is no longer acceptable. It's not enough because this regime does not understand anything about politics now. All it understands is force and power and violence. If we don't use violence against this regime, it will not stop its killing and atrocities. What is needed from the international community, first of all, is to protect civilians. This would only be done in the lightest terms by creating a buffer zone on the borders, either in the south or in the north, doesn't matter, or actually it would be better in both, because now civilians are being killed on a large scale it was 20 persons a day. Now it's over 150 a day. And we expect it to be more because it seems that the veto by Russia and China has given this regime a license to kill. And therefore, we have noticed from the night of the vote, the regime has raised the level of violence it's using against Homs, against Idlib, against Dar'a, against all the cities that are demonstrating.
Let's put that then. Let's put that then to
now
Yousef
what we are
Kanli.
expecting.
This idea of a buffer zone, some sort of humanitarian corridor, is that something that Turkey would welcome and would be involved in?
I think Turkey would not do that unilaterally because that would mean direct intervention in Syria.
But if they did it, if they were confident that they had international backing for this, is this something that they could play a leadership role in?
If there is international legitimacy, that is, if it is not a unilateral action, if it is called by the United Nations, yes. But otherwise, that would be direct intervention in Syria. And Turkey now willing to do it because of humanitarian dimension of the problem. It will not do it alone.
All right, let's turn to Abdel Khaliq Abdella then. Is this something that Arab nations would be able to help out in establishing some sort of humanitarian corridor inside Syria?
Well, the Arab plan is very clear, I think. We really think that this has to be handled through this Arab plan, which has the support of the international community, except for Russia and China, of course. And the Arab plan is very clear here that we are really against any kind of military outside intervention in the Syrian crisis. I think this is going to complicate things. It's not going to be helpful. And I don't think anybody is in the mood for it. So what is needed here is really a humanitarian assistance, a moral assistance, political pressure on this regime that is not relenting, and that is just having the option of military solution. So I'm not sure that the majority of the Syrian or the Arabs will go at this stage for any kind of direct military intervention, and that's not the way to do it. I think the Syrians on their own are capable of taking care of this regime. I think this regime is living its last 10 minutes of the hour, and it's exhausted politically, it's exhausted economically, and militarily. It's the fatigue, and they cannot continue like this for too long. What is needed is that moral, political support coming from the outside, which has not been coming so far.
All right, I want to talk a little bit more about the regional implications of all of this and play you a clip of the Turkish foreign minister and some comments that he made while he was in Washington earlier this week, speaking about his country's foreign policy objectives at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. Turkish Foreign Minister Ahmet Davutoglu said that President Bashar al-Assad has been using what he described as wrong terminology in this to describe the ongoing fighting in Syria.
Regarding Syria, it is a big dilemma for Iranians. I spoke with them very frankly. Even the terminology is interesting. Bashar al-Assad once said, this is a fight between Arab nationalists and Islamists. It was a dilemmatic statement. If this is a fight between Arab nationalist Assad and Islamist groups, then where is Iran? Islamic Republic of Iran. And where is Arab League, the ultimate union of Arabs? Arab League is supporting people, Iran is supporting an Arab nationalist. So this type of ideological orientation is wrong.
Interesting comments there from the Turkish foreign minister. Basically, he's saying that to try and paint this as some sort of ideological battle between Islamists and Arab nationalists is basically nonsense. What's your view on that, Bassam Imadi?
The regime and its supporters have been trying all their tricks to make it unrealistic to the world that what is going on is a real revolution. Remember, from the very beginning, the regime was perplexed. They didn't know what to say, what to do. First of all, they accused the Palestinians. Second, they accused Al-Qaeda. Then they talked about Salafis. Then they talked about terrorists. Now they talk about gangs. Now, this is very obvious that they are unable to cover the truth. The truth is like a sun, and they are trying to hide it with their finger. What is happening is a revolution by the people of Syria against a regime which is killing its own people. People should understand the fact that the Syrians are now have decided to overthrow this regime no matter what it costs. Now, I want to go back to what one of your guests said about that the Syrians are capable of doing the job by themselves. That is very true. They can do it. But they cannot do it without help from outside, because they don't have arms, they don't have means to fight this regime, which is using the help of external powers like Iran, like Russia, like Hezbollah, in order to kill this uprising.
But Issam,
now, if the international world,
sorry to
could
interrupt.
you let me this?
All right, just briefly.
Could we just let finish this idea? If the international world does not want to intervene militarily, which the Syrians did not want at the beginning, but now with this level of violence, they want some military help. If they don't want to make an intervention by themselves, please give help to the Syrians to help themselves. Provide them with arms, with ammunition, with things that they can defend themselves. Now, you know that the regime is getting a lot of help from Russia and Iran and Hezbollah.
All right, but Syria, as you know, is a country that is made up of a number of different ethnic and religious groups. And the fear of many countries in getting involved in this is that they will be fomenting any of these ethnic and religious tensions, and that we will see a full-blown civil war. Isn't that a genuine concern?
This is an illusion created by the regime. The regime has been trying all its best in order to frighten people around the world about what might happen in the future. Look, what is happening in Syria is that the regime and its followers, Sunnis, Christians, Alawite, Druze, and everybody, the regime has some supporters from all sects, from all religions around it that are benefiting from the existence of this regime. Whereas on the other side, you have also all sects, Alawites, Druze, Sunnis, and Christians, and everybody who has been crushed by this regime. So this illusion of a civil war does not exist. This is a war by a regime against its people from all sects and all ethnicities. So there will never be a civil war. What is going to be is only a resistance force against this regime. Forget about civil war. Civil war is always between components of the people themselves. Here the people, the majority of the people is against the regime.
I want to put that to Yousef Kanli then. Looking back at what happened in Lebanon and not so long ago in Iraq, the Turkish government has got to be concerned about this spiraling into ethnic and religious divisions right on their border.
Of course. Of course. I mean, that is number one threat. Syria situation, which, contrary to what my friend has said, is a full-fledged civil war already. If it grows more, I mean, if the opposition or if the rebels trying to overthrow the government continue using violence on government, that is why Russia and China vetoed that resolution, because it was one-sided. It was seeing only the government violence on people, but not the rebels' violence on people or against government. Then this situation will grow into an uncontrollable, explosive situation in the entire area, because it will turn into a sectoral war. I mean, this is a very dangerous thing. That's why Turkey is trying to use the civilian initiatives. And that's why Turkey is calling Friends of Syria, preparing to call for it, to gather an international grouping that would support a civilian transformation in Syria, that would put pressure put more pressure on Assad regime to go along with the November plan of the Arab League, for example, rather than the January one, where you know, the only difference perhaps is in the November one there is no call for Assad to step down, whereas the January one calls him to step down and provide transition.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. My thanks to all three of our guests for taking part in the discussion. In Istanbul, Bassam Imadi; in Ankara, Yousef Kanli; and in Riyadh, Khaliq Abdella. And thank you very much for watching. And remember, if you want to catch the show again online, just go to our website. al-jazeera.com is the address. And do join us again next week for more Inside Syria. Bye for now.